We are recording. Cool. So the main purpose of this recording is just for anybody who missed it, or for you guys to be able to catch up if there's any kind of unique insights to come out of this. So the intention of this mastermind is mainly to use each other's talents, and for me to be able to bring in resources and potentially mavericks for Q&As, and really just to get into your world and find a way that we can all support each other with scaling and growing this year with a lot of intentionality behind that. So there isn't necessarily a structured set of content for each session. It'll be a little bit more free-flow discussion, but I will set some general guidelines that will help support us kind of go in the right direction. Part of this is really predicated on the documents that you guys filled out. So about half of you have filled them out and sent them to me. About half of you haven't. So if you could make it a priority to do that, maybe right after this call, to fill those out, even outside of the context of the conversations in this mastermind, getting those filled out and getting the questions answered in there will bring some really great awareness to where you could do things to more intentionally grow and scale your business. There's the questions in there are very specific to get you thinking in the right direction, and then the resource recommendations in there are also very specific. So with that, kind of want to cover like the main topics and categories that we'll dive into over these next 3 sessions, and then live at camp will be based on these kind of overarching categories, and we may, depending on what everybody's needs are, dive into some of them more than others. Caveat here is while I have expertise and resources in some of these, I'm definitely not the expert, so this isn't like me teaching a bunch of stuff. This is me facilitating conversation, sharing what's been working for us with Vision Tech Team and other companies that I'm involved with, and hopefully asking and probing with the right questions where we can leverage each person's skill set here to get some of the best materials, best answers out of all of this. And then Ali will track a lot of what happens here. Ali's also here to kind of share a lot of what works in Vision Tech Team, and she's more operationally involved on like hiring processes, systems, and how we run our meetings, and a ton of other stuff that may be helpful. But she'll also kind of take notes and pull the resources and key insights out of these conversations and out of the Slack channel, so that we all have kind of documented resources and tools for growth and scaling. So with that, the categories we'll talk about culture, especially as it relates to team culture, as that's a super important, as some of you who were just in the Robert Hirsch hangout, super important piece of growing and scaling a company is getting the culture, mission, values, organizational structure, all of that right, so that the organization isn't just depending on your leadership, but it has kind of a life of its own. We'll talk about systems and processes, including supporting each other with those, being able to review or give suggestions on building SOPs or operational structures. We're talking about marketing and sales and scaling that, so whether that's through different advertising channels, if you got one thing working, how do you duplicate that over others? Whether that's fine-tuning your offer and getting support and having conversations around that, so that you can have 1, 2, 3 things, whatever they are, that actually scale in the marketplace versus consistently working on the creation process without being able to scale the marketing. And then we'll talk about unique ability. So what value you add to your team, or what value you add to your organization, and how can you leverage yourself and your abilities the most, so that you're ultimately scaling yourself and your time without having to add more time to a calendar. So as kind of a big picture, any questions or any discussion points on that as a larger intention and summary? Cool. So then the first piece, and this will kind of be homework for you guys as well. I noticed out of the people that did fill out the document, there was one of you that had a vivid vision, which is Michael Mathes, and I'll give you some feedback on yours. I think there's areas for evolution there, and I'll have you post it in the Slack channel as well. For the rest of you guys, to confirm, does anybody else on here currently have a vivid vision? Yeah. And I know what you mean, Dan. Totally. So, and then does everybody here has everybody here either read the chapter in Double Double or strongly familiar with what a vivid vision is, or is there anybody that isn't familiar with that concept?
I am not familiar.
Got it. Cool. And Josh said he's not either. So vivid vision is pretty simply it's a concept of painting the picture of what your business looks like at a certain point in the future, typically 3 years out. So right now would be a good one to write for like the 2020 vivid vision. And it's describing what does my business look like in present tense at that point. So let's say it's January 1st, 2020. I'm walking around my company, whether it's virtual or real or in a physical office. What does my team look like? What do my customers look like? What does my revenue look like? What is my positioning in the marketplace at that point? And getting super clear on that picture. You don't have to have the strategic plan on how to get there. You don't have to have kind of all of the details in place, but getting a clear idea of what the business looks like at that point, writing it in the present tense, and having it be something that you can publish out to your team, to your customers, to the rest of the marketplace, so that everybody that gets involved with you has a picture of where this organization is moving forward. One of the main reasons that this is super important is for you personally. So if you have, I love the quote, which is, if you don't know where you're going, any path will do. So whether it's the stuff that we discuss on this mastermind or any other materials or resources you read, sure, you can measure based on metrics. Okay, did this help me make a profit? Did this up-level my game a little bit in business? But it'll be hard to get an idea of whether these tools, resources, conversations are actually moving towards what you want if you're not clear and haven't written down and published what it is that you want to create. And the minute that you do that, all of the external resources align a lot more closely, and it's a lot easier to say no to the things that are otherwise distractions, a lot easier to say yes to the things that you know push the needle forward. And you can measure whether you're actually going in that direction or not. The strategic plan becomes a lot easier when you know at least the destination that you're heading towards. Other reason this is super important, I'm really trying to sell you guys on this concept because one of the homework assignments will be to bring this vivid vision to the next session or have it published before that, or at least a draft version of it. So I'm trying to sell you guys in this concept. So other reason it's super important is for your team. So even if you as an entrepreneur know where you're going, which oftentimes there's a big disparity. You may know where you're going, you may know why, but then you're hiring people that don't know where the organization is going. And you can kind of tell them a couple of times, but they'll forget, or what you say will change. And what you say may be described differently depending on your mood and your time available to describe it and so on and so forth. So doing this once, it becomes a duplicatable team motivation piece and the kind of like guidance for where your team is going. And it allows people to make decisions on your team that are in line with where the organization is going, and it sparks people's creativity to help you meet your goals. And it also helps you recruit the right people. So if you have a clear vision of, hey, this is where we'll be 3 years out, most people that you hire, there's some that are just looking for a job right now, but most people that you hire, they're looking for something right now, but they're also looking for something that they can grow with that will help them head in the direction that they want to head in their lives. And if you can recruit based on the principle of somebody getting excited about where you're going because it's aligned with where they're going, they're going to be a lot more committed, and you're going to get a whole lot more ROI for the dollars that you're paying them and the time that you invest in training them, and the longevity of every single hire that you have is going to be a lot greater because there's a clear vision that's published that they know where you're going. So with all of that, initial, even before we start like a ton of discussions around this stuff, like immediate like takeaway, I think, and homework piece would be come to the next session whenever we schedule that, or ideally even beforehand, throw it in the Slack chat for maximum feedback from everybody. And for examples, write your initial vivid vision. Have it be anywhere between probably 2 and 5 pages, and have it describe what your business looks like. Ideally in the year 2020, could be a little longer, could be a little shorter. And if you need help with that exact process, just read the first chapter of the book Double Double. So here's a link to that. And then you can also go on Cameron Harrell's website. He has a number of examples in there. And then once those pieces are in place, again, the rest of this conversation becomes a lot easier because then a strategy for how to create the path to get there. So I just wanted kind of a big monologue around this stuff. Any questions or concerns that come up around this?
Well, no, I was just going to say, so how loud am I?
I can sort of hear you.
Can you hear me getting out?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
All right, so no, I've always just put my business around. I guess it's kind of the nature of what I do, but I've always done it looking at a year, 2 years at most ahead. Looking 3 years ahead is so hard because I just don't know what the landscape is going to look like on YouTube, for the algorithm, for anything like that, which is why I tend to go for such smaller amounts, you know?
Yeah.
That's a really hard thing. So, well, what sort of things am I talking about in this?
Yeah,
am I talking about things like traffic? Am I talking about things like how I'm monetizing it? Because if I'm going to say I want to be earning this much money, I want to be able to have a way that I'm getting there, or do I not need to worry about that?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in 2 ways. First, I'll answer the specific question you're asking, and then I'll answer with a question to have you contemplate on. One is that you don't have to have so Michael, Sarah's question was largely just to repeat in a way that also generalizes it for everybody.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, the question was perfect for you. I love that. So, and it also applies to a lot of others where if your business is especially being niche specific, dependent on a lot of market factors and technology and things that are kind of outside of your control, and you'll have to continue to navigate how the marketplace works for your business to be successful. How is it possible to write a vision 3 years out if you don't know anything that's going to be going on in the marketplace 3 years out?
Yeah.
So it's a very valid point, and you can also write a 1 year vision, and that's one valid option. But what is important to differentiate here is there's a difference between a strategic plan and a vision. Usually, a strategic plan is something that's 6 months to a year. The vivid vision is something that you look further out, and you don't have to know how to get there. You don't have to know what the marketplace will look like at that point necessarily. And you don't have to know all the different ways in which you're monetizing at that point, and so on and so forth. But what is important is to know the direction that you're going with your company as a whole and what it looks like in a way once you get there. And there's factors that are within your control that have nothing to do with the marketplace, like what does your team culture look like at that point? What does things like what does your revenue look like at that point? So whether or not whether or not you're monetizing YouTube at that point, or there's an entirely new social platform that you're monetizing at that point through affiliate marketing, or you launch your own products through that platform that you sell to this list that maybe are on some unique app that doesn't exist yet. All of those things can fit into, okay, I want to have a $2 million company with this kind of culture, with these kind of employees, and a part of that is I want to be able to travel the world while I'm doing it and not have an executive role in my company. Like all of that can be part of your vision that's not even remotely dependent on marketplace factors. So then the question I'll propose back to you and something to contemplate on is, do you want is your future, or do you want your future to be dependent on external marketplace factors more than it's dependent on your own inner guidance?
No, I mean, it's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully how does all that land for you?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I will definitely go away and do that. I think I was probably the first person to fill out that sheet, so.
Yeah, you're totally on point with that, so I appreciated that. Awesome. Anybody have further questions on the vivid vision concept or any discussion around that?
Yeah, I have one, and I know you might touch on it, but I'm not sure how specific to really get into that. Like the vivid vision doesn't need to be like specific numbers or like a specific scenario, or like how clear should that really be? So that way it's not like too confusing for people. They don't need to know, maybe all the details, but. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I would look at the couple of examples Cameron has on a site because there's different levels of specificity you can go into. I think the most important thing is that when you read it, and you can get feedback from your team on this, when you read it and when people on your team read it, it feels compelling and clear. In the sense that they know, like when you read it, you're like, I know where we're going, and I know potentially how I want to contribute to this, or that I want to contribute to this,
Okay.
and that it's compelling, meaning like this is exciting for me. That it's exciting and challenging for you, and it's exciting and challenging for the people that are reading it that want to be on this path with you.
Okay. So as long as it motivates them and excites them, then you're
Yeah.
good, regardless of really how detailed it is or not.
Yeah. So and it can be subject to change to some extent, right? Like you can now set you're like, okay, I want it to be 2 million in revenue, and maybe there's opportunities that come up that expand that vision for you. But what I encourage is staying both grounded in reality, but also far enough outside of current reality so that whatever it is that you write does not come from a place of your current limitations, but comes from a place of like the possibility and potential of what you can build and create. So like I wouldn't necessarily write like, okay, 3 years from now I wouldn't write something that feels so unrealistic that it scares you enough that you don't actually get paralyzed and don't do it. So example like I wouldn't write something like, oh, 3 years from now I have 500 locations with 2,000 employees total for my gym, right? All over the country. Like you knowing yourself, you probably aren't going to necessarily walk down that path on that level in the next 3 years, right? But still writing something that's challenging enough for you that gets you to think 10x from where you are now, and that really will get you and everybody that's involved to level up and get excited versus just like, oh, cool, this will be a steady trajectory over the next few years.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Other questions on that or anything relating to it?
I will bring you some of these ones like you got. I love that. I'm gonna have that question. You know what? I want a backsplash on ours. Is that kind of the sheet?
Is that Michael?
Someone put that up. I did. You do it?
Oh, okay, yeah. I muted you for a sec. Cool. Any other questions on that before we move on to another piece? Cool. And then one of the things I'll do as part of this, so I'm like in this with you guys. We have a vivid vision for Vision Tech Team, but I actually am now updating it from 2018 to 2020 and evolving it based on where we're now going as a company versus where we were going when I first wrote it. So as soon as I have that new draft, I'll share it with you guys in draft form as well. And I'm doing the same thing for Next and for Evolved Enterprise, where we have kind of this overarching vision that Yannick has written for the Ecoverse as a whole. But then there's different pieces of it, and the pieces that I'm running and driving, I'm writing my own kind of like sub-vision for that's a little more extensive on those particular companies. So I'll share those with you guys. Like I'm assigning myself this homework as well, and it's something I've been both excited about and procrastinating on. So this will be an exciting accountability piece for me. Awesome. Why don't we kind of jump into like this is hard for me with not everybody having filled out their thing, so there's not enough of like a common thread as far as challenges. But out of the topics of, let's say, like team, systems, processes, culture, unique ability, those areas, any specific thing that you guys would want to jump into, have discussion around? Unique ability, cool. Anybody else?
I mean, I would like more advice on hiring people. I don't have, as you know, from my thing, many people at all. It's the nature, in many ways, like so many people I know in affiliate marketing are the same. One of the things I talked to you about the first time we talked on Skype was about how I do everything because
Yep.
I don't know how to send that out to someone else because equality is so important for everything that I do. If I do something subpar, it really has a big impact. Like if I send out a subpar video, that video is going to do terribly. That's why it's so hard to outsource what I do, because I just don't know how to find people that are as good at these things.
Yeah, that's great. Let me ask, what have you tried that hasn't worked well?
Well, what I have the really the hardest thing right now is finding people to write things that they're super niche but really really good. So the project I've got right now, I'm more likely to be able to send out to someone. For example, with Wholesale TED, it's just so niche. It's way too niche. Anyone that knows the technical information that I provide on there, they just don't have the ability to write something that's engaging. I just haven't found anyone for that. To be honest, I haven't really tried that much for Wholesale TED. But for my next YouTube video, YouTube series, I would like to be able to find someone who can write really high quality material. And I just can't. I've tried to go to Upwork. I've just tried to ask around. I've tried to even look at hiring someone from the Philippines, but I just can't.
Have you so Upwork was going to be my first suggestion to start, but are there
Yeah.
sites out there specifically for hiring writers?
Yeah. If there were, like, if there are sites where you can hire writers, that would be really nice. And then the hard thing is just that, like, right now I don't have the time to go through so many applications, because like the thing I've found is that in life is that you hire someone but they may not necessarily work out, and you've got to spend the
If I
time
can,
to do that.
if I can jump in, something I would say, having hired writers, it was a long process to find like a whole system. I went through a course called Authority Hacker they gave me like loads of templates and everything. Finding writers, I outsourced to my assistant. I gave him a system for it. We've been through quite a few writers. We have some regular writers now, and we have a pretty good steady churn of content coming out. And in my experience from doing this is that a terrible writer who knows what they're talking about can be fixed by a really good editor. You're better off spending your time looking for a really good editor and then just finding like shitty writers who know what they're talking about. Because my editor will take, this guy was somewhere in Europe and his English was clearly not his first language. He waffled immensely. He'd send me 3,500 words and she'd get it down to like 2,000. And it might take her a few hours. In fact, oftentimes it would cost me more to pay her to edit it than it costs me to pay him to write it. But what I'm left with is a really good post. So if you can find a good editor first, you're going to be in a much better position.
No, that makes sense, because no, that makes absolute sense actually. Would you be able to like send me anything on that then, like in terms of the templates and stuff for hiring people? Because I never
Yeah.
thought about breaking it up into two things like that, getting someone with the technical knowledge and then sending that off to someone to then structure into something nice. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
And Josh,
I'll send that over.
like when you have a editor or these writers, like is the editor also kind of like freelance paid by hour? How do you make sure that the editor actually has enough time to review your articles versus other work they may be having? And kind of what are the going rates that you're paying?
You'd be surprised about where I mean, technically you could say I found my editor on Tinder, but that's the short story. Basically, she's a flight attendant, and she happens to have an English degree, and she loves editing. And I was like, cool, my other editor was in university. She used to just correct my blog posts to take the piss out of me when I was starting out, and I hired her to edit my stuff. I'm paying my editor like $12 an hour. She asked for 10. I'm like, I'm going to pay you 12, and you're going to invoice me and take whatever that you'll pay whatever percentage that PayPal is going to take. And I actually said to her that because she has something like up to 30 hours a week free, just sitting in hotel rooms, layovers. Like she spends like a night in Charlotte, North Carolina, or somewhere like boring. She doesn't do anything, so she works on my website, and the position I gave to her, I was like, here is all of my documents on how I do it. Take it, learn from it, and then you're in charge of earning your own money. As many writers as you can hire and as much editing as you can do, I will pay for all the writers and I will pay for all your hours. There's no limit, so long as you want to find them. So I put it
Got
to
it.
her
So
like
this
that.
is the same person that recruits the writers for you then.
Now she does it. My assistant used to do it, but I gave her a few techniques for finding writers. I taught her how to use some Ahrefs, which is an SEO tool, and I was like, look, come up with the best SEO titles, edit them, and like she corrects me, and like when I hand her a shit title, she's like, no, we can do better than this. Like, she's pretty good. I don't know if she'll last forever because she's a flight attendant, like, but she's like, most days she's in my Slack channel, or I wrote a review on the cruise I took. I wrote this 2,500 word review. I was like, I want to get this out now because my other one made me loads of money. So I just sent it to her, and like an hour later, it's edited and I can publish it. So I'd be surprised, like, if you're looking for an editor, look for someone who has an English degree and is not. I mean, how many people have got an English degree and don't use it? I mean, probably quite a few.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people around. Just ask around or something. And she really loves doing it, which is good for me. My sister even did it for a little bit. It's not actually that hard to find an editor. If you can find crappy writers and a good editor, you've solved your problem really.
Yeah, no,
Cool.
no, that's true. But how long are your blog posts?
A minimum of 1,000 words, and then anything from there.
Well, I love this. This is a really good insight. I've never heard that before, and I think that's awesome. It's like finding the person driving all of it and doing the quality control, and then they're responsible for.
Yeah, I was actually looking back on it recently. Like, actually earlier today, I was thinking about how long it took me to get that off my plate. Like, I actually saw her. I met her again in Buenos Aires. She came down with some friends, and I was like, "Oh, you edit? Like, do you want to work for me?" And then she messaged me a few weeks later. It's like, "Hey, just let you know, I'm sitting in a hotel room doing nothing. I could be working right now." And it still took me like another month before I managed to get all the systems together to send to her, because that's a part of the job that I don't enjoy. But now it's done. It's off my plate. It's like brilliant. Just keep bringing me traffic, and I could also send her access to my my Google Analytics, and she'll be able to see how much the blog posts are earning. So then she can then go back and like, okay, these ones are the ones that are making us the most money. We're going to find more like this. So it's a good. I quite like that. I can just hand that off and basically forget about it. I mean, I still read them kind of. But, yeah.
So one more thing on hiring writers. I found a lot of success hiring people that work for school newspapers or any type of newspaper in general. You'll see a lot of students that have worked for either college newspapers, blogs, magazines, whatever, and they have an expectation that they're going to get paid shit. So whatever you pay them is probably going to be way better than whatever they think that you're going to give them, because they're used to thinking, because there's this whole, especially in the States, I don't know how it is around the world, but there's this notion that writers are all broke here in the States. So you hire one, they work their freaking ass off, and they're some of the best writers I've worked with, and quite diligent. And they also make for great editors as well, as they've been through a formal editorial process.
I just dropped a link in the chat. This is actually something I discovered at South by Southwest, but it's a free tour, and then you can get a style book, like the Associated Press's style book, for like $60 for a year. Basically, it plugs into your browser. Anything like you bring up your WordPress editor, click a button, it will show you all the grammatical mistakes, all the spelling mistakes, and correct it from within that Chrome plugin. It's like $60 for a year. My editor loves it, so if you're gonna get some writing done, use that.
Josh, what do you use for your editorial calendar?
We do well. We're not bringing them out as thick as fast as I'd like at the moment. We are starting to use Trello, because then my assistant knows when to go in, and when his job is like, okay, now I need to add social media stuff to this, and we move it through the pipeline. And we could also look at a different range of what's it called, different types of blog posts. That way it's all color coded, so you can see, all right, well, we don't want too many like how-to posts at once. We don't really want too many question posts or whatever. So Trello is actually a really nice tool that we're starting to move into. But just to say now, I learned most of this, like all this hiring writers and like blog post templates and everything, from a course called Authority Hacker. I won't be sharing the logins because they're good friends of mine, and I wouldn't do that to them. But it's currently closed. It's $1,000 for a lifetime membership. When it opens up, I'll let you guys know, and you might want to jump in there.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome. This is really good stuff. I appreciate it for myself as well, even just getting the larger conceptual strategy of how you've hired and then how you've scaled out that team and let things go. Awesome. So if there's nothing else on that, we can move on to another topic. So you guys mentioned unique ability from Josh, Michael around managing people, Michael Shen around systems and processes. Out of that, anything that you guys want to jump into specifically?
The reason I mention it is I look back on the last year and I think of the times where I've been most excited about work. And it's either when I've got a big project on, like Black Friday last year, I worked for 2 weeks solid leading up to it because I was getting on a cruise, and I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And then recently I've had massive problems in the website, not making money where it's supposed to, and I was doing like this really intense data diving, and I was stuff like my unique ability is probably a very analytical thing, as well as I'd say I'm getting a lot better at managing, but how do I take my unique ability, like the stuff that gets me excited now is data and Excel and spreadsheets and shit, which I didn't expect. How do I take that and use it to its full potential in the business, but also identify where my weak parts are and outsource that? Because I'm not making the spreadsheets myself, or for the most part I'm not. I'm getting someone else to do it. But if I only do my unique ability, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's not being done, and I need to, like, where's the cutoff point of identifying, okay, I don't do this now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you still do it responsibly, where you don't leave a task until it's properly delegated, or you feel like it's not needed in your business. But identifying where you add the most value, but also makes you the happiest, and then looking at all the other areas that have to be done in the business, just literally listing them out, and then figuring out what you can outsource to a team or eliminate. I also think it's really important to take whatever you think your unique ability or area of highest value add is and start to communicate that clearly to your existing team or new team members that you hire on. And you say, hey, this is the stuff I'm really, really good at that I would love to do. This is the stuff that I'm not as good at, and we'll win more as an organization if you guys start to take all of these things off my plate. And they'll actually start to support you in that, because for them it's a larger win if the company does well and if you're happier. So, like, what are some, I guess, more concretely, like, what are examples that you'd be concerned letting go of?
Something that I need to let go of at some point in the future, and I have no idea how I'm going to do it, is product creation. Also, I mean, I'm going to start building a system. I recorded a new course 2 months ago. Not like it's edited, it's uploaded, it's ready, but I've done nothing to launch it because I've been so busy managing other shit. So I think that once I get into the launch process and I get really into the data of that, that's something I'll enjoy and like doing. But the actual product creation, that's gonna slow me down, and I've really no idea how I could get it done without myself being there. I kind of bridged the gap a little bit. I filmed this new course and I went to an expert on it, and I paid him and I filmed it with him, and then I just took the content, edited it.
Yeah, Josh, so one of the biggest ways to outsource like the content creation, because at this point, like, I think on my site we have close to 150 courses, and
Wow.
I haven't made a single course since 2013. And a big part of this is you just got to start finding these instructors from Skillshare, Udemy, all these like big marketplaces, because these guys are hungry to create content, and I'm sure for whatever X amount they'll create a whole original course. Like, and as long as you incentivize them, well, in your case, you'll probably pay them a fixed fee. But for example, with like Udemy and Skillshare, there are instructors that have approached me now about just creating courses to introduce how to get your course on skill success, right? And the incentive I've given them is I'll pay you $100 for each instructor that we actually end up working with. So in your case, find these instructors who already have made solid photography courses, and then offer them, a fixed fee.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it comes down to like sort of very anal quality control. Like I want it to look this way. I want it to have this quality video, this quality audio.
Yeah, well, just provide like kind of the parameters you want them to work around. Have them send you test videos as they go, and then once you've seen enough videos that like, okay, these kind of meet our quality standards, then give them the green light to continue.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the course that I've created it's pretty phenomenal, and I'm excited to launch it because I mean the images that come with it are kind of mind blowing in that it's like a bucket list thing. Every photographer wants to do it, and it's not easy. So I'm like excited about it, but at the same time, it's like I bought Product Launch Formula a year and a half ago. I've not used it because it's this big, daunting, like massive job ahead of me, and I want to tick all these little things off my list that never come to an end first. I'm getting a lot better at outsourcing though. That's one thing I'd say I'm better at.
So Josh, it sounds like there's these two big areas for you. One is product creation, another one is marketing, or at least a lot of pieces of marketing outside of the ones that you personally love doing. And the product creation part, even referencing back to the hangout with Robert and Jock earlier this morning, you're actually building a much more valuable company if you're able to build it more in a publishing model where other experts are able to come in, and you have a process for recruiting those experts, for them creating courses with whatever parameters you set, and it's a lot more scalable, and it's not dependent on you even though right now you've built expert photography as a brand versus Josh Dunlop, it's still centered enough on you that it's a major limiting factor in the business that limits both your freedom and the value of your business.
Yeah, for sure.
And it seems like it's actually like a pretty, with your systematic mindset around things, pretty simple thing to actually go in there and figure out how to leverage people that are probably even better at product creation and at photography and at teaching this stuff than you are. They're just not entrepreneurs. They're not going to go out and build a business around this stuff. You can recruit with either some incentive or a flat fee to do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised at how cheap I got this guy to make a course for me. I paid him $1,000, and I stayed with him for 5 days and just filmed.
Yeah. And for him, he was probably like, cool, I get to just teach stuff I do and this guy's going to hang out with me and pay me $1,000. That's cool.
Well, part of the reason it was quite cheap is he wants the exposure that comes from my website. So a big incentive for me is to try and book up his calendar with people wanting to come to his workshops, because he offers workshops on this. If I can get that done, and I get a testimonial from him saying, hey, Josh booked up my calendar for 3 months, I could then go to anyone who goes to the workshop and say, hey, do you want the same?
Right. Now you're building a platform which is more valuable, and you have potentially other ways that you can monetize that platform through those experts' channels, and you're not just building this course, you're building literally this photography platform, which becomes a much more valuable and profitable business potentially. On the marketing side, that literally sounds like it's what's been happening for you is you've been great at hiring people to do jobs, but you haven't yet hired somebody that's more of a manager or an executive. And the editor sort of plays that role, but it's still a little more task-oriented. And it sounds like what you need is somebody that's like a marketing manager, eventually plays kind of a CMO role, that's actually really excited about doing something like taking Product Launch Formula and fully applying, executing, doing everything that it takes to get that piece implemented in your business profitably. That's that's their unique ability. That's what they're excited about, so that you can continue to play within yours.
Yeah, what's that's interesting, I've just spent 3 weeks with Michael O'Donnell. What I found really interesting about him is that he is the marketing manager effectively in his business, and he doesn't let anything go until, and he's like me, he doesn't let anything go until he's actually worked out the exact process, has it written down, has a video, has everything transcribed, and it's like, here, this is how we do it. He doesn't let it go. The only difference with him and I is that he's much faster at getting that done and saying this is the process and handing it off, whereas I tweak and I fiddle and I want it to be perfect before we scale it. If I get an extra 10% here, we scale that 10 times.
And that's, I think that's great for him, and it could be a limiting factor, limiting belief for you. Where if you think about it, let's just use the Product Launch Formula example, right? Somebody else already put together the SOPs. Jeff Walker did, right? You just have to have somebody go in that gets to know your business and finds out how to relevantly execute that for you. And then even the processes around that could be a co-creation process, right? It doesn't have to, and it depends on how much you're willing to pay and whether you're willing to give a percentage to that person on their performance, which would probably make sense in this case. So let's say you hired somebody that plays a marketing role, you pay them some sort of a base plus some sort of a percentage, and they're more excited about doing that than either doing their own thing or having a more standard corporate job, right? And then they get to go in, they get to study all of this stuff, they get to become better than you at a lot of it, and then you guys collaborate and co-create whatever the marketing pieces are, whatever the processes around that are, and their responsibilities to drive profits on that side of the company, and they don't really win unless that role is profitable for them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Role to hire for, right? It's more of an executive than it is like a task doer, but it takes not only a level of like a bunch of things to do off of your plate, but it frees up your mental attention and process because you know that somebody else eventually takes full ownership over driving that part of the business.
Yeah, it's definitely something I need to hand off. I've been thinking recently about, because I've got like a CRO team. I pay them $5,000 a month. Like, I could probably for the same amount of money find a marketing manager who would just work for $5,000 a month and provide me probably significantly more ROI. I mean, the CRO teams are great, but it's still a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You could find probably a marketing manager for that amount, and then you pay him some percentage of maybe like gross profit, like 5% or 7% or something on top of that, and then that person is responsible for CRO, for driving ads, for either writing copy or managing your copywriter, for taking things like PLF and implementing them in a new way, for launching new courses, for like overseeing the big picture of all of it, and yeah, for six sort of incentive, you could definitely find somebody that can be a really good fit for that.
Do you know where I might look for that?
Well, even before the places to look for it, like getting really clear on what you want. So like writing out, using the process in Who/top grading, but like writing out the scorecard, the expectations, the role in a way where you're painting your ideal scenario on paper or in a document, and then putting that out there to, like, I'm sure you can go anywhere from traditional career sites like Career Builder and Monster and all of that to Craigslist, but most likely you'll find the person through the network. So like Internet Marketing Super Friends, the Maverick Next, and kind of like Maverick Extended Network, different groups that you're a part of. Most likely the person will come through a referral, but that's not to say you can't put it out there on more traditional job sites as well.
Yeah, out of interest to this group, who here has thought about replacing their entire role, or like 80% of their role? Because it's something that crossed my mind a couple of times in the last year. Like, what if I didn't have to do all of this? What could I focus on, and how much more money would it make me? Because I got the cash flow to pay someone $5,000 a month to take a load off my plate, because I'm sure he'd earn me that back at least, he or she. Is this something anyone else here has toyed with the idea of, and have you investigated how that might work? Because I think that's interesting to me.
Well, I mean, I'm not doing it, but I'm certainly thinking about it. The most important thing for me is making sure that in the future, the content is not reliant upon me as a brand. Like, I see those ads for, what's his name? The guy who does those great videos, and he's like, sell yourself as a brand, and that's absolutely true in many respects. But like for my like actual brands, I do want to make sure that I am not a necessary part of them. So for my next YouTube channel, it's not going to be me presenting them. I think that's the important thing for me.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
So I have 2 full-time marketing hires on my team right now. Honestly, I got to a point where I was in limbo because, for this last 2 weeks, I've been going through a lot of stuff with the business, and I was like, how do I use this person properly? And, I was kind of trying to figure that out. But I did hire a marketing manager back in February when we first started, and, basically had some goals of here's what I need you to hit, and, kind of have the weekly check-ins, and then sometimes daily, depending on, what the urgency is of what we're working on. But this is also someone that I more or less kind of like home grew in the sense that before he got to me, he was working in like a research lab, right? So I kind of taught him everything that he knows. So, we got to a point where he can handle a bunch of things. And then, even after I brought him on, I wanted him to be very, very clear on what his role was. So I had him like write his own job description, so that we were kind of on the same page. Because like I would communicate one thing, and then I wanted to make sure that he had it. But yeah, do you have any like specific questions around it? Because the only reason I was able to travel for the last few months and pretty much work like an hour a day was because of that.
So that's interesting what you say, because I was coming at it from a different approach. Now you say he's a product of you. My thought is, and I'm going through the same process as for hiring a new VA this week, what would
Sure.
happen if I put brand new fresh eyes in this situation, someone with different experience, different knowledge? You've basically made almost like a clone of yourself. Do you think it would have been valuable to hire someone who had experience already, who wasn't trained by you?
I can,
Yeah.
That's the part that intrigues me.
yeah, I
Sure.
can move on, but first let Zion do it. There's something for you there.
Yeah, so I've done both. One of my hires, she's extremely competent. Anything I give her, I don't have to worry about anything. And there's high value to that, just because I didn't train her, but I'm building up her skills in other areas, but I didn't train her at all. And bringing her on let me just like not have to worry and think about it at all. So that's kind of like the trade-off, right? And then the other thing is, if you train someone, the other thing is like people, when they come to you, have a lot of bad habits, and they might not do things the way that you want. And let's say that you do want things done a certain way, they kind of bring a lot of baggage with you. So that's kind of why I like training my own folks a lot of the time, because if you think about all the things that you really need, um, other than like high level strategy, a lot of the tactical stuff can be taught fairly quickly. Like I have a group of people right now who I hired like a week and a half ago, and inside of a week and a half, they've put up like 4 sites and started learned everything that I need them to learn about SEO, started ranking them, and they're doing quite well. So these are people that had never even heard the word SEO before.
Don't think about the model. I'm just talking about the data.
Zion, what's your take on like hiring individuals and then kind of training them to be specific to what you need versus, let's say, hiring like a digital marketing agency?
Sure. So you have to always realize that when you're hiring an agency, they don't always have your best interest in mind, right? Because the agency has their own P&L to manage, which means that they only have a few, quote unquote resources to allocate to you, and they're not really in the business, right? So I always found it odd that companies would kind of outsource all their digital marketing, especially because as a company, you really, this is from Traction, but as a company, there's only 2 things that really matter, right? It's your marketing and your product. And if you outsource your innovation and you outsource your product and you outsource your marketing, then what the fuck are you actually doing? Like I don't believe that you should do that. So my take was always to home grow certain types of talent, and then stuff like media buying, like ad buying and stuff like that, like I can outsource that all day. Like so it really depends on the specific skill, right? So high level marketing management, I would always have internal, but maybe some of like the small things like media buying, whatever, I can outsource that, because that's all they do day in and day out.
If I can speak on that quickly, for whether you outsource it to an agency or an employee, or you're an individual freelancer. So some people know that I had Guillaume running my Facebook ads and my Gmail and my AdWords and everything. Guillaume was decided back in the consulting to work on his focus on his actual business, which is fine for me. Not only does it save me about $2,500 a month that I'm going to pay him, it also, I like how the relationship with the freelancers has changed, because now they answer to me whereas before they answered to Guillaume, and then Guillaume answered to me, and there's a disconnect there. And I like that they're responsible, and it's actually a role that I really enjoy in the business. Is like, hey, you answer to me, this isn't working, why isn't this working? Like, not like a big fearsome boss kind of thing, like how can we make it work? And I much prefer that dynamic, because now I feel like there's probably going to be a little bit less slacking. I can message them and they don't go to Guillaume and be like, I haven't had enough, I don't have enough time for this at the moment, or any excuse. I remember once before, I was asking too much, so the price went up. But they had to, we had this big drop off. Whereas now it's, hey, if there's an issue, you come to me, and I prefer that. There's other things that I'm no good at. I'm good at advertising. I'm not good at CRO. I'm okay, but I'm by far not the best person to be doing it. Another team in place, I'm very happy to be going through them. So there's both ends of it. But I would definitely say that I like having the freelancer at my disposal and not having a middleman, if possible.
Got it. So Josh, Guillaume was more like, like an ads manager, and then he had his own team of freelancers, and then now you have your own team of freelancers. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically they went. I used to pay Guillaume, including VAT, which is 20%, about about $2,000 a month. Sorry, $5,000 a month. Now, I think the AdWords guy's invoice is like $500 a month. Facebook is, I think, 1,000 or 1,500 euros. It's like not much, which is obviously way cheaper for me. And I get to, A, you save a lot of money. Like, I'm happy to have that money back. B, you get a lot more, I guess, accountability by going direct to them rather than having to have a middleman.
Yeah. So Guillaume was almost just like the consultant in between, but it's the same exact guys running the ads.
Yeah, I mean, it was just that Guillaume used to do AdWords consulting. That he hired a guy to do it for him or with him, and then I was like, I want you to do my Facebook too. So he found a guy for that, and then we had some issues in the business, and I think with my time, me taking so much of his time up to fix these issues, as well as him having other clients, he was like, I just need to stop this and focus on what's important, which is his actual business. And I completely encourage that. There's no ill will between us. I'm like, it's definitely the right decision for him, but it's definitely it's worked out better for me.
Josh, so I want to answer the question that you had earlier as well, that this conversation kind of segued into, which is about replacing yourself on a management level, or replacing a lot of the things that you do. So I've done this multiple times, both within Vision Tech Team and now within Involved Enterprise. So the most relevant and recent example that's probably most applicable to where you're at, or where some of you guys are. So with Involved Enterprise, Yannick and I launched this thing in like October, November, and I basically took on this both CEO and CMO role in the company while still managing Vision Tech Team, Maverick Next, and everything else I had going on in my life, and knowing that, okay, if I keep this up, this is just not going to be sustainable for my life. And also knowing that I'm not the best person for this role, I'm just doing it because somebody's got to do it for now. So with those things going in, I knew that I wasn't going to be the best fit long term for this, and I was going to step out of this at some point. I just wasn't sure how or when. But I started that search pretty early on. Like, somebody's got to get into this role. I was lucky enough to be referred to somebody and having several conversations with that person in interviews. So this is Mike Budney. He came on board and took that role. With him coming on board, there were a number of things that quickly happened. One, he had more experience than me on the tactical and strategic side of marketing, especially in the information marketing space than I ever had. So he was in many ways a better fit than me for the role. And he and I started to cultivate this one-on-one relationship, because the main concern for me was that, okay, he has the skills, but he's not going to think like I think, and not necessarily going to have the same vision. So early on, did a lot of so hiring somebody like this. Let's say you find the right person and bring them on. Early on, it'll probably take more of your time than less. It won't necessarily immediately get things off of your plate. It might take a couple of months of a lot of one-on-one time to get them to understand how you think and how you function and why you make the decisions you make and how you built the business to the point where it is so far and where you want it to go. But through that close working relationship and dynamic, eventually you'll pass a lot of what's in your head and your vision to that person that's playing that role. But that person will play that role a lot better than you have, because they were now hired for the specific skill set. That's where their background is. That's where their passion is in driving this portion of the business. Versus for you, that was never your thing in the first place. You started a company, you're an entrepreneur, you were never meant to be the marketing manager or whatever it is that the role is for your company. The only reason that you've gotten good at things is because you were excited about driving the business forward, so you've put on every hat and you've gotten good at those hats. And it's hard to it's sometimes easy to forget that you did that without the specific intentional training of that being your business path. Versus for somebody else, that's usually a lot better than you at most of these things. That's their unique life path. So if you're able to take that hat off of you, put it onto them, and realize that they're going to be a lot better than you at that anyway, and all you have to do is once you find the right person, really cultivate that relationship, and then you let go. And having done this now, both Vision Tech Team with multiple roles for myself, and with now most recently with Evolved Enterprise, not only does it work, but if you want to grow and scale and free yourself, it's necessary and inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things recently that I've been thinking about, I would want a marketing manager just do marketing, and then I'd still sit on top and make sure everything's running. Today was quite a busy day in the Slack channel, but I like getting the team together and just letting them work. So I had a designer on Upwork. I got her to come into the Slack channel, and then my Facebook guy, who once a week is asking me for new designs for stuff. I'm like, here, she's in the channel. Tag her, talk to her, and it's there's an hour of my week back every week.
Right.
Little things like this, just getting them all together, working together, and just watching over it. Because one of my strengths, I say, is strategic thinking about areas for growth. Just if I could just sit back all day and just think about it,
right.
I'd be doing so much more. Anything from or just freeing up my time to write reviews, or get a bunch of stuff that could be making me money in the background, so I'm not focusing on all this other stuff. It's interesting that the route I probably need to take is hire a marketing manager while still maintain that role. I like what Zion, you were saying, you work an hour a day while you've been traveling, and I think that's a good approach, is to just step back and make sure it's running and put out any fires. My question to you, Zion, though, is do you find that the business is growing with you only doing an hour a day, or is it kind of maintaining?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. So it really depends on what your goals are, of do you want maintenance or do you want growth? So the person I hired was very much for maintenance rather than growth. And with that said, to your question before, do you hire someone that you want to train, or do you want to hire someone that already knows their stuff? And that also depends on your timeline for how much time do you need and what's your sense of urgency around it. So for me, it was very just about maintenance, right? I just wanted shit not to break, just so I can take the time for myself and kind of just be happy and do nothing and pretend to work everywhere I went. And then, but now that I'm kind of back, that person's still in that kind of maintenance mode, but we just had a conversation the other day where this is actually something that I was thinking about the other day. It's if you get to a point where your team or the members of your team are willing to fire themselves, then you got to a really good point in your company. And I realized that.
Can you elaborate on willing to fire themselves?
Yeah. So basically, I have a conversation with them, and they have a level of awareness that they're not serving the company to their own greatest capacity, and that they realize themselves that they're no longer, an asset based on some of the goals that are outlined or the direction of the company, whatever it is. And I've gotten to a point where I think I'm just really where the people that I've hired really align with it. And by the time I have a conversation with them, they're like, listen, so this is how the conversation went on Friday, where I was really not happy with this guy's performance, because now he was kind of getting out of maintenance mode, and then he was kind of going back into growth mode now that I'm back, right? So I realized that it was a little bit of a shock in terms of, okay, well, because I'm back, I require more time, I require more things to be done, and here's where we're at. And at the end of the conversation, he basically said, "Look, Zion, like for these months, I was really, I was an asset, and now I see why and where I'm becoming a liability. And if you need to discontinue this relationship at the end of the month, like let's revisit the conversation then, and you just tell me." Like he asked me, "What are your personal goals? What are your goals for the company?" And at the end of the conversation, he basically said, "Look, if it doesn't work out, like I'm not going to feel ill of anything because I just want you in my life." Right? So I've been very lucky in that sense that I've never had to fire anyone, because every single time it's come down to it, they've more or less let themselves go.
Interesting.
Because and that's just a matter of setting the right expectations out of the gate when you hire, as well as along the way, with like the different KPIs and things like whatever rocks that they own and so on and so forth. If you want to go like traction terminology.
Yeah, and also I want to comment on the whole idea of like replacing yourself. So like a strategy I've been doing was in February I was still like, okay, I have like different freelancers, but I feel like I'm almost in paralysis by having to oversee too many things. So then I decided that for my biz it's got to be split up. Someone's got to take responsibility on the development, on the customer service, the marketing, and the financial part of it. So my mom happens to be an accountant, so she actually works for my company full time and does all the finances. Then I took the best customer service person and said, all right, you're running ship on the department for customer service. I took the 2 best developers and said, one's a project manager, one's a CTO, you guys run that department. And then so in like April, we had like 4 freelancers. Now we have a team of 13, and it runs super smooth. And this is with the plan that by the end of this year, I just have that one meeting with the CTO, project manager, and customer service manager one week, and then everything. But those 3 people, the CTO, project manager, and customer service manager, are versus I'm not a very detail-oriented person. I want to get in the position where it's kind of focus on strategy and still heading up the marketing part. So I think a big part of that is just having fewer people report to you.
Question.
Having to oversee. Yeah.
That's really good insight. Question for you about that with compensation.
Yeah.
Do you have any incentive-based compensation for those people, or is it purely salary?
No, it's purely hourly. But what I do is like quarterly, I'll either give them like bonuses, but honestly, I just try to treat them as like friends and family. Like if it's like their birthday, I give them money. If it's their like kids' birthdays, I give them money. Like I just try to treat them, almost to the point where I know those 3 people, they would not leave my biz even if they got a higher paid offer. And then also what happens is now we move on to like an annual pay raise, but previously I was giving them a raise every 6 months. Yeah. And also one thing that I noticed was originally I was paying them a salary, but then we had this conversation with the entire team, and then everybody wanted to be paid hourly.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I was surprised about that too.
Benefit?
No benefits. They just said we'd rather get paid hourly versus salary. Even though and what's funny too, a lot of those people were working under 40 hours and they're getting paid 40 hours, but they still opted for hourly. I feel like it's the whole idea of like, there's no longer like a ceiling of how much money they can make. So
I was going to go the other way actually. I was going to say it's almost freeing for them where, if they need to do 35 hours and it doesn't quite get done, they can have that. All right, well, you only pay me 35 hours.
Yeah, that's what I thought too, but yeah. So that's just a little insight.
Oh, that is interesting. I would much rather pay hourly than salary.
Yeah, I like the salary thing because then it just gave me, I knew what my fixed expenses were going to be with my staff that month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Vision Tech Team, most of our people are salaried, but with Evolved Enterprise, I've been experimenting with incentive-based compensation. So like there's a salary/retainer, but then there's different incentive-based pieces. So for our new copywriter, there's a certain percentage that he has on outgoing email promos, a certain percentage that he has on Facebook ad performance because he's starting to take that piece over. Mike has a certain gross profit percentage of the whole company.
Can I ask, sorry, how much is the percentage you pay the copywriter? Can you tell me? Or is that hush-hush?
Yeah, so we do 5% of outbound affiliate revenue.
Oh, okay, cool.
Got it.
Do you,
Yeah,
do
see,
you
I've
do,
thought about the whole incentive thing, and I've always been nervous about, because the whole US dollar is translating to, let's say, in the Philippines, that it may become demotivating. Like, I've thought about that with the dev team saying, like, all right, instead of no pay period, I'll give you X% of what we make. But then I feel like at some point they're gonna make enough money where it seems like it's a lot of money to them, and then that kills motivation there.
I I definitely appreciate that concern, and I think for we've never done it with devs. We've given them bonuses, and same with like designers or more things like that. For I think incentive based is more relevant conversation for marketing positions, where the person's performance is or the person's compensation can be pretty tied to their performance. So if somebody's like writing copy or running ads, or if somebody's running an entire marketing department where their goals and their metrics are around hitting certain top line or bottom line goals, and the way that they show up is in their job and perform in their job is relevant to those numbers, then I think it's valuable for their compensation to be also somewhat tied to those numbers. So it's more of an executive thing, less of a day-to-day worker thing, but especially in roles like marketing, where the success of it can be easily measured, versus like development or even customer service is like there's measurables, there's metrics there, but they're less concrete and specific. They're less oriented to the growth of the business.
I guess you'd call a limiting belief I've had and still have is the whole percentage to mostly a percentage to a copywriter. It scares me, A, because my accounting is not that good, B, because I don't want to have any long-term attachments to something, C, like I don't know if they're going to perform so much better than what I currently have that would be worth the investment and make me more money. There's like a whole bunch of reasons why I'm scared to give people a percentage. Like D, like if I sell the company at some point in a couple of years, it's like, oh, but you have to pay 10% to this copyright every time you sell this. There's a bunch of reasons why I don't like it, but part of me, the back of my mind is being like, would I earn more if I just hired like a much more badass copywriter who took a percentage?
I think you would. I think you would. I mean, I mean that have you been to a big massive affiliate? Well, not massive, like an affiliate mastermind where they're earning like 10 million to 100 million, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Like everyone there, they hire like I the guy who taught me everything I know, Mark, he hires Chris Haddad. I don't know if you've ever heard of Chris Haddad,
Yeah.
but Chris gets a percentage of everything that Mark sells that he edits, and he also pays him like $10,000, and that's his friend rate. And he will look over copy. He won't even write copy. He'll take copy that Mark has gotten someone else to write. He'll look over it and do things like that. But it makes so much more money if you do that. If the copywriter is making you so much money that it's a large percentage, 10%, then you've already won. It's unlikely that they would write as good copy if they were not getting a percentage. I think any copywriter that's really worth their time, they will demand a percentage.
Yeah.
All the big boys, they are paying copywriters like Chris Haddad and paying them percentages because you pay for what you get.
That's the thing. I would probably make more money in that sense, but it doesn't make those fears go away so much.
Well, the rest of those fears you can also just work out. Again, it's like what Michael said about parameters with course creation, parameters with copywriters, not just in or not even parameters in this case, but limitations on that. It's about structuring the right agreements.
Yeah, like maybe I pay commissions for a year, 18 months.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Like in our case, ours is different because it's not our guy's in a vendor. This is somebody we brought on full time, and this is just part of his total. Like he has a retainer-based compensation, and he has 2 incentive-based forms of compensation. So it's just part of his overall comp package. And same thing with our marketing.
And Yannick's happy with his copy?
Yeah, so far. And he's been continuously improving. So he initially came on as more of an apprentice for Yannick, and then has continued to grow from there.
Interesting.
And he's not like the super ninja copywriter, but the idea is that he is developing with us, and he will be with us long term. So I mean, all of the perspective I share comes from the unique place of everything I'm building for the long term. So I want these companies to be here years from now, and I want to set up the best systems and the best teams and the best incentive structures for everybody to play at their best. So it's coming from that perspective versus I think there could be more shorter term perspectives around how to make more profits now or how to build a company to sell quicker. I take on less of that and more of a long-term perspective, which it doesn't always serve everybody, but that just so you know at least where my answers come from.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of thinking on incentive structure, mostly because one side of my business is purely just profit-driven. So I've talked to a lot of people on this as well, and there's this one company that was due percentage on a sliding scale. So every single month it would reset. So based on a certain amount of profits that that person generated, they would get a percentage. If it was a higher, they'd have a different percentage, etc. And then what they found was that people were very individualistic. So they actually created it where it was like a team pool. So they changed it from an individual commission structure to a sliding scale on a team pool. So then everyone was forced to actually like work with each other, and that actually boosted their profits like way more. Like I know like last month they cleared like $300,000 profit, and you know, to the copywriter, media buyer, whatever conversation, it's like you know, one of my new business partners is a copywriter, and you know, one piece that he wrote has generated 7 figures, right? So it's like, how much is that really worth to you? And for me, it was like really, you know, because his incentive's tied to that, and then he's also forced to work with the media buyer, right? Because, you know, he wants it to happen. So now I'm kind of in this boat where it's honestly been stressing the hell out of me, because figure out this new incentive structure for my whole team and figure out what that sliding scale looks like. But I know that I want it to be a percentage on that. But Josh, to your point earlier, what they did was, you know, they would give like the option of not an option. It's either base pay or it's the commission that you earn on the percentage, and then you just get whatever's higher.
Okay.
So at least, yeah. So at least that way, it's like, you know, you paying them what you're expecting to pay them, and then if they blow it out of the park, they're properly incentivized for it.
Right.
So
I like that.
you know, yeah, because we're at a point right now where we're spending like a day, and
Say again?
you know, so we were at a point last month where we were spending like $5,000 a day, and you know, the arrangement that my new business partner made with this former media buyer was like a significant percentage of the profits. I was like, look, man, like, you know, we're gonna have to restructure this whole thing, you know. So, but I've definitely seen that, especially when it comes to media buyers and people that are just like running ads. It's like they'll 1,000% always perform better when their incentive is tied to, you know, whatever percentage they make of the actual net profit that comes in. Always, it's almost always the case, because then they really have no incentive to see that number go up, unless you like really do a good job hiring for character, and it's almost like, you know, they have this personality quirk where they can't help but just like go hammer away at home. But people get complacent, you know, and that's why they did that resetting sliding scale every single month.
Interesting. Every month.
Every month it just reset, so they're starting off from 0 every single month.
And that's the percentage. Is that what you're referring to, the percentage for the copywriter, where they earn like X amount each month?
No, so this was Sarah knows this world a little bit more, but these guys are your hardcore affiliates. Like they do everything from, you know, the copy to the media buying. Like they know everything from step 1 to whatever. So everyone's kind of incentivized on the same scale. And the other thing is like you need your copywriter to work with your media buyers. Like if they're not working together, and I think their incentive should actually be the same, right? Because if they're not working together, you're ultimately going to fail, and they're not going to make as much money for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually on my list right now, is to find a copywriter for advertising, because that's one of those leftover things that gets passed over to me.
I think I'm gonna...
Say again, you broke up a little bit there.
on a sliding scale. So then everyone has to like work with each other and talk to each other. Otherwise, it's like, you just don't want to create an incentive structure that forces people to work in silos, which is where that like cutthroat sales organization comes from, right? Where everyone's incentivized instead of what they bring together as a team. And that's very much like I've seen it time and time again on the difference it makes in how people work together when, and but it's all also matters on how you hire into that culture as well.
Interesting. Cool, thank you. I feel like I've kind of hogged this mastermind call. If anyone wants to move on.
What was that?
No, it's really relevant to lots of things as well, what we've been talking about. Like, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I feel like Michael Mathis might be a little left out, but I think for everyone else, a lot of this this feels like really relevant overlapping.
Yeah, how many of us are in digital fields like that versus physical fields? Is that what the difference here is? Like,
Yeah, that's for the most part. So Michael has a gym. So maybe some of the conversations are relevant, but most of these maybe less so. So Michael, I know you had some questions potentially around management.
No, I took some really good things away actually out of that. I think for scaling and kind of the ideas of like team pool, commission, or like hiring an incentive-based copywriter for stuff. Because right now I do a lot of that stuff, just like the copywriting or the marketing on my own. But I definitely think in the future a lot of that could apply. But yeah, just kind of. Just my questions on managing people were just finding ways of motivating them and getting them to buy in and understand. When I tell them just certain tasks that need done, or whatever it is, and just getting, I would say, more of like a positive response out of them to buy into what I want them to do. I feel like I struggle being as clear as what I need to be with them, because I feel like sometimes they bring a little bit of like bitterness to, oh, well, why do I have to do that? Like they just don't maybe see the reason or a total buy into it.
Yeah, let me ask you this based on reading your thing, because so you pay people, most of your guys are paid hourly, or the one salaried guy, but for the most part they're paid based on the hours that they show up, right?
Yeah, I have 2 salary guys, 1 media guy, and then 1 full-time guy, and so those 2 are salary, but the other ones are salary, yes.
What would you say are the main KPIs in your business? Like if these things are doing well, you know that the business is doing well.
Our intro course retention, as far as how many people sign up out of there, and then other than that, just those member surveys feedback as far as how people feel, how the results are going. But I don't think I have those structured enough consistently. So I think if I had more like KPI numbers set for them, that'd be better. But it's more really just like a feel of me. I walk in, I check out things, that's not right, or this person needs, this help, and why isn't, so Tommy in the corner by himself, or whatever it is. So it's usually just like my
subjective evaluation of how things are going.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's the problem.
Yeah, I would encourage you to come up with clearer KPIs on client satisfaction, client retention, and measure those weekly. You don't necessarily have to find a way to tie compensation to them. If you can, that's cool, or even tying bonuses to them, or tying, even if it's not monetary compensation, but tying some sense of collective team accomplishment to those KPIs.
Would you say like a net promoter score or something?
What was that?
Like a net promoter score or something that.
Yeah, like saying like
customer satisfaction is a great one.
Yeah, setting goals for the month or for the quarter, like this is what we want to hit, and then collectively on weekly meetings discussing that.
Would you give each person a KPI or as a team?
Both. So if both as it's relevant. So according to Traction, the idea is everybody should have a number. Depending on the position, it's hard. But everybody who does have a number typically knows, not only performs better, but they know how they're performing currently in comparison to their expectations. So if you know that, as a sales guy, your number is, to make, 10 grand a week in sales, in gross sales, or you know that as a lead gen person, your number is to generate 100 leads a day or whatever it is. Or in your case, if you know that, that the net promoter score for their specific clientele, if they have specific clientele, or for their evaluation for whatever courses they teach has to be X, they're at least able to measure themselves based on some sort of expectation. So that's the individual piece, and then the collective piece is you may have just like let's say you don't have people that are just signed up for specific courses with specific instructors, but they float through a lot. Then the collective team KPI is okay, net promoter score for the whole thing, or a certain kind of like client retention numbers, or whatever they are. And then as a team, you guys can strategize on how do we hit this number, or if you're not at the number, then it becomes there's either a motivation discussion or a or some sort of like collective problem to fix or whatever.
Yeah.
But right now it sounds like, even based on reading your analysis for yourself, is like there's a lot of subjective evaluation going on, which makes it really difficult for you to give your team concrete enough feedback, because it's all based on your observations and opinions, and you can't be everywhere at once, managing everybody, seeing everything that's actually happening. You can only really look at the results, which are a little more objective.
Right. No, I totally agree. I don't think I have any clear, like clear goals or numbers for them. It's just really, if I'm in a good mood and things are going well and the clients are happy that day, then great. But the next day, if they're not, then shit hits the fan or whatever it is.
Other
right,
as far as evaluation is, do you have or have you done a people analyzer based on your core values?
Yeah, I have, and I wrote this in my sheet. Like, I feel like I did it one time, and maybe I just didn't use it right, but I felt like it was very, I felt like it just depended on whatever mood I was in. Like, I'm just gonna, I feel like if they met that core value, then they got a plus. But I saw them yesterday; they didn't do that thing, so they get a minus. Like, I felt like it was very inconsistent when I would rate it.
Yeah.
If I can jump in quickly.
Yeah, there's two things you want to do with that. One is grade it with your team. So you get the whole team together and you say, okay, what's John for this core value? Would you guys say plus, minus, or minus, and why? And
okay,
here's some kind of answers collectively as a team, so you get the whole team's reflection.
Sometimes I feel like my team thinks they're better than what they are.
Okay.
I'm just throwing curveballs, but sometimes we'll sit down and we'll talk about stuff, and I'm like, well, I don't know.
That's fine. You ask them to explain why, and then if you have another reason, you say why not, why that's different. It's like somebody's like, oh, I'm definitely a plus for that. Well, you say, well, I'd label you as a plus minus because most of the time you match that. But in the last month, I've seen these three scenarios where this core value really could have been better exemplified, and let's move the bar up moving forward.
If I can just jump in.
Good feedback.
If I can jump in on that, you want to have words with Michael O'Donnell. He's got this whole system for KPIs, and they get like a 15% bonus if they meet all of their KPIs. Like whether it's not letting customer support go longer than 24 hours. If you do this every day for a month, you get a 15% bonus, whatever. He's got a whole system. He's got spreadsheets. He's got spreadsheets coming out of the ears. Have a word with him because he might be able to give you some insights and motivating.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'll check that out. That's helpful. Thank you.
So, Mike, I had a quick question for you too, because you said that a lot of your team doesn't buy into certain things.
Yeah.
So, what do you mean by that?
I would say, for instance, if I can maybe think of an example, but if say something, we have like a checklist when everybody leaves at the end of the day, they're supposed to fill out and write in the logbook as far as like notes for other people, and sometimes everything on the checklist gets done, and then sometimes there's like some things that don't get done, and then when I go back to people and I'm like, well, why didn't these things get accomplished that day on this checklist, then there's usually some sort of excuse where I feel like they didn't really fully buy into, I don't really have to do all of this, I just need to do these things. Or even just with like training people, I feel like sometimes they'll go through the motions of working with our people and training them, but they won't really take it to the next step where I know that they can take it to the next step as far as how their service was. I feel like they could give it a 10 on service. They really could, but they give it a 7. They don't really give it their all, but why? And I'm not motivating them enough, that I overwork them, and then I ask them about it, why didn't X, Y, and Z happen, and, there's 5 excuses. So I just feel like I'm a poor manager on that end, because I feel like my team always has an excuse for why they didn't do the job 100%.
Sure. So I'm hearing two different things. So those daily checklists, does that mean that the deadline is by end of day?
The deadline is end of their shift. They need to have it done and completed.
Okay, so if it doesn't get completed, how does that affect them?
We have I have a I don't know, other than me being like, hey, why didn't this get done? That's about it.
Okay. So I see two things happening here. The first thing is that you probably got them into a bad habit where they don't really know what the repercussions are of not doing things.
Agreed.
And they probably don't think that they're replaceable, right? Like they probably don't think like you'll actually get rid of them.
Right.
And I think that's just a habit that forms over time in terms of how seriously they take deadlines, right? Because that's definitely more of a culture-driven aspect of how you communicate with them. And the second thing is the fact that they're not taking it above and beyond. There's nothing you're going to be able to do as a leader to motivate them even more, right? It's like that's that's kind of that's a personality type, which is why I hire more for personality rather than skill nowadays,
Yeah.
because people are either intrinsically motivated and have that willingness and that mentality and that capacity for growth, or they don't, and it's as simple as that. And I think that it's really in your hiring that that got broken there.
Yeah, I could see that. So, I mean, and anybody feel to chime in, but how do you punish, and not, I mean, guess what are the repercussions for, your staff or your employees when the job's not met? How do you, I guess, punish them or make them feel like, oh, I messed up, I need to do a better job? Do you have like write-ups? I know like a lot of businesses just do like write-ups or, they put it in a file or whatever it is.
Well, first I
But-
just asked them why.
Yeah.
First I asked them why, because instead of like, I always I always frame it in terms of like, did you have any roadblocks today that prevented you from doing this? Right? Because then it sounds like you guys are both in it together, and that if there was a roadblock that prevented them from doing it, then it's not necessarily their fault, and maybe something had to be cleared. So in the event that they didn't get something done, it's just like, week after week, you just say, look, it's been 2 weeks, and you're really putting a lot of strain, and I'm just going to let you know that we have to have another conversation in 2 weeks if this keeps up.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I just had that conversation like 3 times last week. Because, I've just been.
So what'd you do after having the conversation?
Situated.
You know what I mean? Do you just have another conversation and
That's
then
it.
you just have a conversation with them, and then if they do it,
I mean,
great.
you
If
have
not,
to.
they're fired.
Yeah, so I gave them a very hard deadline on when I'm going to follow up with them. I'm like, listen, like you've been dropping the ball a lot on a lot of different things, and I'm letting you know now that this is, not acceptable. There are a lot of times where you're coming to the table, all I hear is excuses for why things aren't getting done.
Mhm.
You and I both agreed that you were able to get these things done. So it's not like I'm setting an expectation that you're not able to meet. It's the fact that, we agreed on these expectations, right? So they know that it's at the end of the conversation, they're like, my metric for how well those conversations go is if they thank you for having that conversation with them by the end of the conversation, right? I've had this conversation 2 times in the last week, and both times I walked out of it with them thanking me, and I also set a hard timeline as far as another time that we're going to follow up and check in, so they know that it's coming, right? And we'll say, so I told them, it's like, look, we'll check in at the end of the month. I'm just letting you know that I'm not happy with the way that the last 2 weeks or the last month or 2 months have been. And then we'll but setting those check-ins, and it's just about owning up to your word too. So if you set that check-in and you don't actually check in, they're going to take you less seriously.
Right.
Right. But if you set that check-in and you do check in and you properly evaluate them objectively with the metrics that you gave, to Dima's point, then it's not even your opinion. It's just a fact that they didn't get shit done.
Right. That's very good.
I have an idea for you, and this could be integrated into your next version of core values as they evolve. So, like, the idea comes as like something about a culture of coaching. So you're all about, like, your business is all about coaching and training.
Right.
And that's what you do for your clients, right? So I think finding a way to implement that same culture within your organization, so that you guys are all coaching each other. You're coaching them And it becomes not like this, oh, you did something wrong, so you're being coached, but it becomes like this is part of the expectation of being on this team is I'm going to coach you. And we're going to have our weekly group coaching sessions, we're going to have our monthly one-on-one coaching sessions, whatever it is. And within the context of coaching, now you have this opportunity to give a lot of feedback, to help them get to where they want to go, to help them get to where you want them to go, to meet goals. So
Yes, good to meet.
and you have an opportunity for feedback from them. But it's not like this thing that you're implementing to fix a problem, but it's this thing that you're implementing because this is part of how you want your organization to operate, and it relates directly to your marketplace, right? CrossFit coaching, now the part of the team has a culture of coaching.
Right. All right, I can agree with that. It needs to be more. It needs to be more accepted. I feel like when people get feedback in organizations, it needs to be more. They need to accept it more rather than like, oh no, don't give me. You know what I mean? I feel like they take it kind of with a little bit of a bullet.
Right, and that's part of how it's presented too, is like your leadership and all of it, and how it's positioned is, again, it needs to become part of the culture.
Yeah.
Not this unexpected thing, but it becomes part of your systems, part of the culture, part of the expectations. I got a jet, so we're at the 90-minute mark here. Awesome conversation with everybody so far. This has been super valuable, I think. Would love any feedback you guys have from this session. If you have it, just throw it in Slack or let me or Ali know personally. We'll send out an email shortly to schedule the next session. Meanwhile, just feel free to continue these conversations in Slack. If there's something that seems valuable to connect with somebody one-on-one on, definitely feel free to do that. And ideally, before the next session, well, hopefully, let's do it before the weekend. Everybody who hasn't, just send me that form. I guess it's just Josh. And as far as who's left on this hangout here, but yeah, and then ideally before the next session, get at least a draft of Vivid Vision, send over or post it in the Slack chat for everybody to kind of review and give feedback on.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Cool.
thanks a lot, guys.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye.